Standing in front of the mirror in her spacious Victorian home in Boston's upscale Beacon Hill neighborhood, Amy Walker gently placed her hands on her rounded belly. Her 9-month pregnant body was filled with both the joy and weight of nurturing new life. The soft spring sunlight streaming through the window illuminated her skin, making her serene smile look as beautiful as a painting. "Little angel, we'll meet soon," Amy whispered softly. On the bed lay an opened letter from her husband James. A senior partner at a law firm, James was abroad on a business trip with an important client. He sent messages almost daily, expressing his love for his wife and their unborn baby. The sound of her ringing phone broke the silence. The screen displayed the word "Mom." Amy hesitated for a moment before answering. "Amy, it's the final fitting for Vanessa's wedding dress. You can come at 2 p.m. today, right?" Martha Collins' voice was commanding as usual. It sounded like a question but wasn't really a question at all. "Mom, I'm not feeling well today." "Surely not. You wouldn't refuse to help just because of your pregnancy when your sister's special day is approaching, would you?" Martha's voice was heavy with accusation. Amy took a deep breath. "Of course, Mom. I'll be there." Martha hung up, sounding satisfied. Amy sat down in a chair, looking tired. There was only 1 week until her sister Vanessa's wedding to the famous heart surgeon Thomas Clark. For her mother, this wedding represented the culmination of years of social networking, a moment of glory. Martha Collins had established herself as a respected philanthropist in Boston's high society. But at home, she was a perfectionist, with particularly high expectations for her younger daughter Vanessa. Beautiful and intelligent, Vanessa had grown up meeting her mother's expectations, graduating from a top university and becoming successful in business. Now she was about to marry a young talent from a prestigious Boston medical family. Amy, on the other hand, had chosen a slightly different path from her mother's expectations. After graduating from a local university, she began working at a community legal aid organization. That's where she met James and got married. Now at 36, she was finally expecting her first child. For Martha, Amy's life choices were always insufficient: a modest job, an unimpressive wedding, and a too late pregnancy. But now, her attention was solely focused on Vanessa's perfect wedding. That afternoon at the bridal salon, Vanessa gracefully wore her dress while Martha's eyes welled up with tears of joy. "You look truly beautiful, Vanessa," Martha said dreamily. "Everything is perfect." Amy smiled quietly, sincerely celebrating her sister's happiness. Vanessa had a gentle personality, and there was no conflict between the sisters. However, part of her had unknowingly been influenced by her mother's values. "Amy, you look lovely too," Vanessa said, looking at her sister. "But..." She hesitated, looking at Amy's large belly. "Won't you stand out too much in the wedding photos?" "Vanessa." Amy was surprised. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that." Vanessa hurried to explain. Martha interrupted. "What Vanessa means is that all attention should be on the bride, not you. Amy, just stand at the edge of the photos and be as unobtrusive as possible." Amy was about to say something when she winced from a sudden sharp pain. It passed quickly, but it indicated that something was beginning. The next day, Dr. Caroline Reed carefully checked Amy's condition during her regular checkup. "The baby might be born earlier than expected," she said gently. "Please rest especially well for the next week, and contact me immediately if you notice any changes." When Amy told her mother this diagnosis, she saw Martha's face cloud over. "You mean you can't come to the wedding?" Martha's voice was cold. "Do you realize how hurt Vanessa will be?" "Mom, I want to come too." "But the baby..." "Amy, you always only think about yourself," Martha declared. "This is the most important day in your sister's life." That night, Amy spoke with her husband on the phone. James said worriedly, "You should listen to the doctor. Skip the wedding." "But James, this is my sister's special day. And..." Amy's voice faltered. "Mother won't forgive me." "Your health and the baby are the priority," James said firmly. "I should be back the day after tomorrow. Don't push yourself until then." After hanging up, Amy sat by the window, gazing at the Boston skyline bathed in moonlight. She had always tried to meet her family's expectations. Her father Henry in particular was gentle and understanding, but he had little say at home, overpowered by Martha's strong personality. Amy made her decision. She didn't want to ruin her sister's special day. Despite her complicated feelings toward her mother, she chose to attend the wedding. She wanted to believe it was her own decision. On the morning of the wedding day, the luxury resort, Marigold Manor, in the Boston suburbs was bustling with activity from early morning. In the crisp April air, hundreds of white roses and lilacs adorned the garden, vividly glistening in the sunlight. Amy took a deep breath as she looked down at the beautifully arranged wedding venue from her room window. The dull pain in her lower back that had started the night before still hadn't gone away this morning. She gently placed her hand on her belly and whispered, "Please stay quiet just for today." With a knock, the door opened. "Amy, are you ready?" Martha entered the room wearing an elegant pale blue dress. "The makeup artist is already waiting in Vanessa's room. Come quickly." "Good morning, Mom," Amy smiled and said. "Could I rest a little? I've been feeling a bit off since last night." Martha interrupted her daughter. "Amy, today is Vanessa's day. I don't have time to hear about your discomfort." She looked Amy up and down, frowning. "That dress. Couldn't you find something that hides your figure better?" Amy looked down at her emerald green maternity dress. "This is the prettiest one, Mom. And it's comfortable to move in." "Fine," Martha said resignedly. "Just come to Vanessa's room within 15 minutes. And remember to stay inconspicuous during the ceremony. Stand in the back for the photos." After Martha left the room, Amy stood in front of the mirror, staring at her tired expression. The only consolation was that her husband James had contacted her this morning saying he might return earlier than planned. He might make it to the afternoon reception. Vanessa's room was noisy. Bridesmaids were preparing here and there, while hairstylists and makeup artists worked busily. Vanessa sat by the window, looking nervous as she gazed out at the garden. "Good morning, Vanessa," Amy approached her sister. "Nervous?" Vanessa looked at her sister and smiled brightly. "A little. But I can't believe how happy I am to be marrying Thomas." Amy took her sister's hand. "You look truly beautiful today. Thomas is a lucky man." "Thank you, Amy," Vanessa said sincerely. "I'm glad you came. How are you feeling?" "Don't worry, I'm fine," Amy said reassuringly. But at that moment, a sharp pain shot through her abdomen, and she caught her breath. "Amy?" Vanessa asked worriedly. "I'm okay, just Braxton Hicks," Amy said, waiting for the pain to pass. "Today, let's focus on you." As the ceremony time approached, tension mounted. Amy took her father Henry's arm as they headed toward the wedding hall. Her father looked at her with a gentle smile. "Amy, are you really all right?" Henry quietly asked. "You don't look well." "I'm fine, Dad," Amy tried to reassure her father. "The baby will stay in my tummy a little longer." When they entered the wedding hall, Martha approached. "Henry, you should greet the guests," she said, taking her husband's arm and telling Amy, "You sit down. Don't attract unnecessary attention." Just before the ceremony began, Amy felt another sharp pain and cold sweat trickled down her forehead. The periodic pains were exactly what the doctor had described as signs of labor. She began to panic, but looking around, everyone had already taken their seats, and the pastor was standing at the front. The music began to play, and Vanessa entered, guided by her father's arm. She was radiantly beautiful in her pure white dress, drawing gasps of admiration from the audience. Amy watched her sister's happy expression while enduring the pain. During the exchange of vows, Amy's pain grew increasingly intense. She bit her lip, trying to maintain her composure. A relative in the next seat gave her a concerned look, but Amy could only manage a smile in return. After the ceremony, the photo session began. As instructed by Martha, Amy stood in the back for the group photos. Each time the photographer said, "More smiles," she concentrated on smiling through the pain. "Just the family shots left," Martha declared when Amy was nearing her limit. "Amy, stand up straight. Don't put your hands on your hips." Mom, Amy's words faltered. Not now, Amy, Martha said sternly in a low voice. Just bear with it a little longer. When the photo session ended, it was finally time to move to the reception hall. Amy told those around her that she needed to use the restroom and staggered toward the bathroom. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, trying to take deep breaths. The intervals between contractions were getting shorter and shorter. Amy. Martha's voice came from behind. What are you doing? Everyone is waiting for you. Amy turned around and looked at her mother with a face contorted in pain. Mom, the baby. Martha looked around, and confirming no one was nearby, approached her daughter. Not now, Amy. You need to be seated before Vanessa's speech. But, the pain. Amy's breathing was becoming rough. Just endure it for today, Martha said coldly. It's just a few hours. Doesn't your sister deserve to enjoy her once-in-a-lifetime moment? Amy reached the bathroom door on trembling legs. While pained by her mother's callousness, she was also tormented by the thought of not wanting to ruin her sister's special day. Just as she was about to open the door, a violent pain struck, and Amy desperately suppressed the urge to scream. Mom, please, help me. She said painfully. Determination colored Martha's eyes. I'll come back after the speeches. Wait here until then. With no strength left to resist, Amy entered the bathroom. She knelt on the cold tile floor, trying to regulate her breathing. The luxury resort's bathroom was spacious, with a marble sink and a large mirror covering an entire wall. There were no windows, and the only exit was the door, which was now locked from the outside. Calm down, Amy told herself. She tried to reach for her smartphone but remembered she had left it at her seat when rushing to the bathroom. Panic seized her. Suddenly, a violent contraction tore through her abdomen, and Amy clutched the sink. Her face in the mirror was pale, with sweat-soaked hair sticking to her forehead. Her emerald green dress was already damp with sweat. Help, someone. She strained her voice, but no one could hear her through the thick door and the noisy reception hall. Amy pressed her trembling hands against her abdomen. The baby's movements had become unusually intense. Not yet, baby, not now. She whispered. But her body had already begun preparing for birth. In a brief respite between contractions, Amy tried to crawl toward the door. Mom, please, she cried. Open the door. I need to go to the hospital. But there was no answer. In Amy's mind, the cold expression of her mother Martha appeared and disappeared repeatedly. Endure it. Today is your sister's big day. Those words sounded so cruel. Another contraction hit her. This one was even stronger and lasted longer than before. Amy collapsed onto the tile floor, drawing her knees to her chest and curling up. Her breathing was rough, and the hem of her dress was wet with sweat and amniotic fluid from her broken water. James. She called her husband's name. By now, he was probably on his way from the airport to the venue. If he knew she was in this situation. Amy stopped thinking. She needed to focus only on dealing with the pain in front of her. As her sense of time became vague, Amy tried to think about her situation calmly. It was clear that the baby was trying to be born now. But without help, both she and the baby could be in danger. I need to knock on the door. She crawled toward the door. However, before the next contraction arrived, she couldn't even make it halfway. A wave of pain knocked her down, and Amy lay on the floor, letting out a cry. It was a voice mixed with despair and pain. Mom. Please. Help me. Outside the bathroom door, the reception was proceeding as planned. Champagne was being poured, and the sounds of laughter and classical music filled the venue. The groom, Thomas, stood up and took the microphone. Everyone, thank you for coming to our special day, his warm voice echoed throughout the hall. I especially want to thank my beautiful bride Vanessa's family. Martha, Henry, and Amy. He hesitated for a moment. Where is Amy? A small murmur spread through the venue. Martha quickly stood up and said, she's feeling a bit unwell and is resting. There was a hint of anxiety on her face. The speech was supposed to end in just a few minutes. She planned to go to Amy after that. In the bathroom, Amy's situation was rapidly deteriorating. The intervals between contractions were now just a few minutes, and she was fighting the instinctive urge to push. Not yet, need to, get to the hospital. But her body had already started the natural process. Amy grabbed the plumbing under the sink as if clinging to something. She tried to remember what she had learned in her childbirth preparation classes. Deep breathing, relaxing, not panicking, but being alone in this situation was not something the class had anticipated. God, protect my baby. She murmured like a prayer. Between pains, Amy began crawling again. This time she tried to grab a towel from under the sink and spread it on the floor. But when the next contraction hit her, the pain was so intense that she felt her consciousness fading. James? She whispered weakly. And then, the next moment, the urge to push became irresistibly strong. Amy's consciousness began to drift between reality and dreams. She glimpsed her childhood. Days spent trying hard to be approved by her mother, the small jealousy she felt while celebrating her sister's success, the excitement of first meeting James in college, and the joy of learning she was pregnant. Baby. She was now lying on the floor, trying to push according to her instincts. Come. Mommy is here. Outside the bathroom door, in the reception hall, Vanessa was looking around anxiously. Mom, Amy hasn't come back for a long time, she said quietly to Martha. I'm worried. Martha patted her daughter's shoulder lightly. She's fine. Just resting. Now, let's prepare for the cake cutting. But Vanessa's anxiety didn't disappear. She approached Thomas, who had become her husband, and said, I'm worried about Amy. Thomas nodded and said, let's go look for her. At that moment, there was a commotion at the entrance to the hall. James Walker had rushed in. He looked around, searching for his wife. Where's Amy? He asked Martha. James, welcome back, Martha put on a fake smile. Amy is just resting a bit. She'll be back soon. James's expression darkened. Where is she resting? In the bathroom, Vanessa quickly answered. But she hasn't come back for over 30 minutes. James rushed to the bathroom. Martha, Vanessa, and Thomas followed him. Running down the hallway, James had an ominous feeling. He knew his wife wasn't feeling well. In front of the bathroom door, James stopped and knocked. Amy? Are you in there? There was no answer. Amy, he knocked on the door more forcefully. Martha arrived, looking tense as she faced James. She's just tired. Open the door, please, James's voice was stern. It's locked, Martha said quietly. She locked it from inside. Don't lie. James's angry voice echoed down the hallway. Amy wouldn't lock it herself. Open it. Martha's hand trembled. She tried to take the key out of her bag but hesitated when she saw James's angry expression. Open it now. James shouted. Or I'll break down the door. Martha inserted the key with shaking hands. As the key turned and the door opened, a horrifying sight unfolded before their eyes. Amy lay on the floor, unconscious. Her dress was soaked with blood and amniotic fluid, and next to her lay a tiny baby. The baby was moving slightly but was pale and not making any sound. James's anguished cry and Vanessa's scream of horror echoed throughout the wedding venue. Call a doctor. Hurry. James's voice trembled with despair and anger. He immediately knelt down and crawled to his wife and newborn baby. Amy, can you hear me? Amy. He placed his hand on his wife's pale face, gently patting her cheek. Martha stood frozen, facing the terrible reality of what she had done. After screaming, Vanessa immediately rushed to her sister's side. Someone. Help. Vanessa cried out. Hearing that cry, Thomas grasped the situation. My uncle is here. Uncle William is a doctor. He ran down the hallway, loudly calling his uncle's name. Martha leaned against the wall, covering her mouth with trembling hands. I just. A few seconds later, Dr. William Clark arrived at the scene. He immediately understood the situation and responded with professional calmness. Everyone step back. I need space, he ordered. Thomas, call an ambulance. James, look after the child. Dr. William checked Amy's pulse and lightly tapped her face. Amy? Can you hear me? Amy slightly opened her eyes, looking at Dr. William with unfocused eyes. Baby. Her voice was faint. The baby is alive, Dr. William said calmly. He quickly examined the baby. Breathing is shallow but stable. We need to get them both to the hospital immediately. James picked up the baby and held it to his chest. My son. Tears glistened in his eyes. Bring clean towels, please, Dr. William instructed Vanessa. She immediately brought hotel bath towels. Dr. William quickly wrapped the baby, ensuring body temperature was maintained. The ambulance will arrive in 10 minutes, Thomas returned and reported. Hotel staff and wedding guests began to gather in the hallway. Thomas maintained his composure, saying, Everyone, please return to your seats. Medical staff are handling this. Dr. William continued to carefully monitor Amy's condition. There's a lot of bleeding. But it's not fatal. She's a strong woman. Martha approached Vanessa on trembling legs. Vanessa, But Vanessa moved away from her mother. Mom, why? Her voice was filled with anger and sadness. Did you lock Amy in the bathroom? I didn't think she would actually give birth, Martha said in a trembling voice. I just wanted to make sure the ceremony wasn't ruined. Vanessa's face contorted with anger. My wedding? You're saying that's more important than my sisters and the baby's lives? James stared at Martha, cold anger in his eyes. You almost killed my wife and child, his voice was low and dangerously calm. This is a criminal act. Criminal. Martha stepped back. I just deliberately put her in a dangerous situation, Dr. William offered his professional opinion. Locking a first-time mother alone. You won't escape legal responsibility. The paramedics arrived and quickly moved Amy onto a stretcher. The baby was placed in a special warming device with oxygen supplied. You can accompany your wife and baby, the paramedic told James. James hesitated for a moment before turning to Vanessa and saying, Call the police. Of course, Vanessa nodded. Her wedding attire had now lost its meaning. We'll come to the hospital right away. Martha looked at Henry with a desperate expression. He had been obedient to his wife for a long time, but today's events seemed to have changed something in him. Martha, what have you done? There was deep sadness in Henry's eyes. Endangering our child. I just wanted to make the day perfect, Martha said weakly. Perfect. Henry laughed bitterly. You've ruined everything. The ambulance departed with its siren blaring. James tightly held his wife's hand, whispering, It's okay, you and the baby are safe. You're safe now. Amy smiled faintly before losing consciousness again. The hospital emergency room was standing by, waiting for Amy and the baby's arrival. The situation had already been communicated through Dr. Williams' phone call. Doctors rushed Amy into the treatment room, and the baby was quickly taken to the neonatal intensive care unit. James stood in the hallway with a lost expression. Hours later, Amy woke up in a hospital bed. James was sitting by her side, holding her hand. The baby. Those were her first words. He's doing well, James smiled with relief. He's small but strong. The doctors are amazed. Amy cried. Mom. The police are questioning her, James's voice was cold. She'll have to pay for her crime. At that moment, the door opened softly, and Vanessa entered. She was still wearing her wedding dress, but it was now wrinkled, and her makeup was smudged. Amy. Vanessa approached her sister, crying. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Vanessa, it's not your fault, Amy smiled weakly. But because of my wedding. Vanessa's words caught in her throat. You didn't know, Amy took her sister's hand. And your nephew chose your wedding day. Isn't that special? Vanessa smiled through her tears. So it's a boy. Yes, little Henry, Amy answered. Named after Dad. The door opened again, and Henry entered with Thomas. The old man's face was etched with fatigue and sadness. Amy, because I was weak. Henry approached his daughter's bed. I should have stopped Martha sooner. Dad. Amy couldn't continue. Martha was taken by the police, Henry said quietly. With Dr. Williams' testimony, she's facing serious negligence charges. The room was enveloped in heavy silence. Everyone felt the family rifts and distorted love that had led to today's tragedy. I can't forgive her, James said quietly but firmly. For endangering our son. We all need time, Amy looked at her husband with tired eyes. All of us. In Amy's hospital room, the family sat quietly, facing the reality of the birth of a new life and the simultaneous collapse of the family. The autumn in Boston was beautiful. Amy sat by the living room window, gently rocking her 3-month-old son Henry. The small life had overcome that terrible day and was now growing healthily. His slightly reddish hair resembled Amy's father. How was today? James returned from work and kissed his wife and son. Good, Amy smiled. Vanessa and Thomas came to visit. They're both crazy about the baby. James nodded while making coffee. Vanessa is really becoming a wonderful aunt. Since that day, the bond between Vanessa and Amy had grown stronger than before. They met several times a week, sometimes talking about the past, sometimes about the future. Vanessa and Thomas had submitted their marriage registration without redoing the wedding ceremony. What matters is not the wedding, but love, Vanessa had said. How's Dad? James asked. Amy answered while touching her son's cheek. He's doing much better. Seems like he's getting used to living alone in his apartment. Henry Collins had decided to separate from his wife Martha and had started a new life in a small downtown apartment. He came to see his grandson 3 times a week, trying to make up for lost time. And your mom? James's voice was cautious. Amy gazed at the falling leaves outside the window. I got a call this morning. She said the court ordered her to do community service and undergo psychological counseling. She continued while holding her son's small hand. She also kept apologizing, she sounded genuinely remorseful. Martha Collins was placed on probation and required to undergo psychological counseling. Her most feared social reputation had plummeted, and she was distanced from the charity network she had built over many years. Ironically, what she feared most was losing her reputation, but through her own actions, that's exactly what she had brought upon herself. Do you plan to see her? James asked carefully. Amy was silent for a long time. I don't know yet. But someday, for little Henry's sake. Amy's heart was complex. Anger and hatred toward her mother still remained, but at the same time, becoming a mother herself had brought new understanding. Her mother's obsession with perfection might have come from Martha's own past traumas and anxieties. That didn't justify her actions but provided a clue to understanding them. Christmas is coming, James placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. What do you want to do? Amy took a deep breath. I'd like to invite the whole family. Dad, Vanessa, and Thomas, and Mom too. James looked surprised. Really? True healing begins with forgiveness, Amy smiled slightly. And little Henry needs a grandmother. Not a perfect grandmother, but a loving one. That night, Amy took out her diary and began to write. Dear son, the day you were born was the most frightening and simultaneously the most beautiful day of my life. You showed strength in the midst of difficulty. Your birth left deep wounds in our family but also taught us the true meaning of family. She looked up at the starry sky outside the window. The wounds were deep but were gradually healing. Perhaps there is no such thing as a perfect family. There are only people who have the courage to face the truth through love and forgiveness. Little Henry smiled faintly in his sleep. The future was uncertain, but Amy had one certainty: she would do anything to protect this small life. That was a mother's love. Even if she herself was wounded, that love would never disappear. Amy gently kissed her son. "Good night, my angel," her voice was gentle. "Mommy will always protect you. I promise."